Hello, this is Pauline Jennings. Welcome to Musician Talk. Dr. Paul Niemisto is this week's guest on Musician Talk. Paul recently retired from St. Olaf College Music Department as Professor Emeritus. He joined St. Olaf in 1978 as conductor of the Norseman Band and instructor of low brass instruments. In 1979, he founded the Cannon Valley Regional Symphony Orchestra, which he still conducts. In 1990, he founded Boys of America, a Finnish-style brass septet made up of American musicians, which has toured internationally. In 2006, he spearheaded the Vintage Band Music Festival. Paul was awarded the Living Treasure in the Arts Award by the Northfield City Council in 2013. He regularly performs as a conductor on trombone, euphonium, and tuba. Paul has 3 grown children and lives in Northfield with his wife, Elinor. Oh, and there's so much more. Let's talk to Paul Niemisto. Hi, Paul. How you doing?
I'm great. Gonna have some frost this week.
I heard
coming right up. I pulled up all of the greens that were still in the garden. Anything that was still there had to get pulled up today. So I pulled the garden down completely. That was my accomplishment this afternoon.
That's a big accomplishment. I still have 2 tomato plants out, so I better get them picked. So, Paul, you recently retired, so you haven't had to go through this COVID relearning how to teach process that a lot of teachers have had to go through.
I haven't really had to try to fight with this. However, I'm a member of a group that has Facebook activity called the Minnesota Band Directors Association. And so I'm reading about their angst and how the administrators in the public schools are trying to handle this and try to keep the students enthusiastic. They all have their eye on the future when it's all going to be normal again one day. Just by looking at the press now, that the public school profession is under some strain right now. There's a lot of stress connected with trying to continue to teach, and there are people leaving the profession more than anybody wants.
Absolutely. I mean, it's got to be so frustrating. I understand, and I've seen those stories too. And I understand the impetus if you're close to retirement, wanting to just do it now. So it's a good thing that you didn't have to go through what your colleagues are going through, and that they're filled with angst about. It's nice that worked out.
No, I don't have too many problems that are connected with COVID, except that I feel confined. That's about the only thing. And also I find what I normally do and what I have been doing for the couple of years since I retired, which is to conduct the community orchestra, the Cannon Valley Regional Orchestra, to do work with this Finnish band, the Boys of America, that we're going to talk about, and to work on getting the next Vintage Band Festival up and running.
That's right.
Which is not all sure when that's going to happen again. And then also I travel because I write academic papers and I present the papers and I do guest lectures. And I'm not going to get on a plane for a while yet. I'm going to wait until I know that it's safe. So all of my fun things, almost all of my fun things, are on the rack right now, waiting to be taken off. On Monday nights, and going over to the deck over at the Cow, the Contented Cow, and playing just Italian arias. Unfortunately, I think that yesterday was probably the last decent day.
Right, warm enough to do that. The opportunity to hear an Italian aria played on the euphonium would have been a great thing to do and hear.
One of my other fun things is a Scandinavian group called Hootenanny. It's a Nordic jam that happens at the Cow on Monday nights normally, and that is definitely on the shelf.
I want to take you back, Paul, to when you first started playing an instrument. What was your first instrument you played?
Well, I grew up on a dairy farm up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, up in the Finnish ghetto up there where all the immigrants are, so I went to a real small school, but we did have a band program, and it was an itinerant director who would go around to all the elementary schools, and I started playing the trombone, and I'm not really sure why it was that instrument over any others, but that's the one that I chose, and as I got into later grades, it seemed as though it was more fascinating to me than any of the other subjects. I continued to get more serious about it, and then I went to the University of Michigan as a freshman in 1966. I sort of avoided a music major at the beginning because I felt so inexperienced in the world of academics. I hadn't really seen anything. I was up in that up in that village on that farm, and I hadn't really experienced what the big world was all about. So I let it go for a while, and then I made my commitment later when I realized that yes, after all, it's the one. And I went forward from there and got my degrees. And when I finished my degree at Michigan, I went to Eastern Canada, although options were not nearly as fascinating as doing something in the Annapolis Valley of Nova Scotia. I mean, it
Oh
just
yeah.
sounded so romantic. So,
And was it? And was it?
it was, and I was just a total neophyte, and I was totally fearless. I did everything. We did musicals, we did European tours, we traveled to New York City, we did
Wow.
festivals. I didn't know about any of that stuff, and I learned it all on the fly as I went along. It was like a trial by fire, and it was all joy. I have no bad memories of it at
Oh,
all. Then I came to Northfield from 1978 until 2016, I guess, was my last spring on campus. I went on a Fulbright grant the year after to Finland for 6 months. All of these other things that I have been doing in Northfield, the orchestra and the festival and the Finnish band, they just have taken a more prominent part of my life until March 2020.
um, so first of all, you got your master's, and then you got a doctorate at the University of Minnesota.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's in music
That's a
performance.
music education
Music.
degree, but the primary area of interest is historical issues. My subject was the Finnish immigrant bands of northern Minnesota, which had never been really documented very well. And it's a fascinating story because of the fact that we have the Immigration History Research Center in Minneapolis at the campus. I had resources, beautiful resources there. Made direct contact with people up in the Iron Range, from Ely all the way over to Grand Rapids, and I got my degree from all that research, and also got a book out of it.
Cornets and
Try-
pickaxes. That's a great name.
Sort of kind of a musical sociological study of the immigrant cultures of the Finns up in the Iron Range villages, and the fact that they used bands as a way to promote their ethnicity and within the community and also without.
Are you Finnish?
Yes,
So that must have inspired this interest in learning more about that Finnish music.
that's a very true statement.
I like that the term musical sociology.
Yeah, music and sociology.
Music.
There's an academic trend to try to understand the psychological, sociological background of music being played, written, listened to. There's a couple of really good biographies that have come out where they've taken some of the well-known composers like Mozart and Beethoven and rethought their story from the standpoint of what was on their mind at that point, what made them go in that direction. You get to rethink the music. It's wonderful.
That is wonderful. How do you do that? How do you get inside somebody's head that's been gone for so long? Is it from writings that they did or writings about them? I
Well,
suppose
yeah,
all.
I think there's a lot of material that maybe earlier biographers just kind of skimmed over. It was there,
Sure.
but maybe they didn't have the academic preparation to read it as evidence of a certain kind of behavior or causal effect. There's letters and newspaper articles and diaries, and not only the diary of a specific composer, but the diary of their friends and their colleagues, and
Yeah.
those things all lead into more information about these subjects.
A lot of research to do that. So I could talk about this for a long time, particularly the sociological side of music. That's very fascinating to me, but we need to move along. So this Finnish connection that we've talked about is a good segue into the first song that we're going to play.
This is the first album that we created. We did this back when we first started the band in the early '90s, so it's somewhat dated, but it's still charming. It's still okay. I like it. And we did a series of mostly social dances that was on this album. What's curious about the Amapamashish is that it's not Finnish at all. It's actually Brazilian. It seems bizarre that a Finnish ethnic band would be playing Brazilian music. But that was this is old material that we got from Finland. We got it from the old books of the old bands. And they got it because the dance halls in New York and from Rio de Janeiro, I suppose, to Paris and Berlin, and not long before it was in Helsinki. And so people were dancing the samba and the tango
Ah,
and the mashish in Finland at a time when you wouldn't expect it. So we just love the piece. We love the arrangement. It's a Latin Brazilian folk dance, and it's kind of cool.
that's great. And the band that's playing it, it's a group called Boys in America, and that is in Finnish. It's Amerikan Pojat.
Very good.
Oh, thank you. And you started this group?
I started it, yes. I saw this music before we started playing it. I saw the sheet music. I just got totally fascinated, but I had to hear what this stuff sounded like. So the best way to do that is to play it.
And are you playing in this piece?
I am. I'm playing euphonium.
Euphonium. So let's take a listen to this. This is Pauline Jennings, and you are listening to Musician Talk. My guest today is Dr. Paul Niemisto, and you just heard Amapa Makshish, played by Boys in America. Paul is playing the euphonium on this song. Paul, I have to admit, I'm not a big listener of brass music, and thanks to you introducing me to this, I love it. I will listen to it more often. I absolutely love this song. I actually listened to a couple others as well when you sent me that link to the album, and I really, really like it. It fills me with joy. It just
That's
does.
our hope. That's our hope. And one of the challenges of doing this album of all these dance tunes is we didn't have a drummer. And so they have to be percussive in a way inside the group. They have to have that element of rhythm clearly defined in the group so that it's still danceable.
Yes. The other thing that I noticed is that the intonation is just like spot on all the time. Yeah.
We strive to do good playing. It helps to not distract the listener from the artistic elements and not to deal with having to apologize. We just try to be we just try to be perfect. That's all.
That's all. That's all. That's all you try. That's all you're trying to do. Well, nice job. So, do you have a current role with the Boys of America?
Nothing's changed
Okay.
for me since we started. There's nobody on a podium. We all play, and we kind of do our interpreting cooperatively.
And when you say Boys of America, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's young men.
Doesn't necessarily even mean that it's all males.
Got it.
So it's kind of a joke. One of the internal jokes on that is that the Finns are much more cavalier about gender in general. They really don't care much about it as a factor in anything much except maybe romantic relations, I suppose. But as far as getting work done, they're just all equal over there, and nobody cares.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up. And the other thing I wanted to clear up, euphonium for the audience isn't as well known of a name of an instrument. What is a euphonium?
If you go to any kind of a high school band concert, you're going to see the euphonium in the back next to the tubas. It looks like a little tuba. A lot of Americans refer to it as a baritone. One of the wrong names for the instrument. It is a confusing mess between German and French, British English and American English, and between tenor horn, euphonium, baritone horn. It just needs some clarification. However, the history is written. Nobody can do anything about it. It is what it is.
That's right.
And those names are going to continue to be confusing to anybody except the experts. And
Got it.
can't do anything about it.
Well, you helped out a little bit for us to
All right.
understand. So
Okay.
thank you. Thank you. So I want to talk about some of your other groups. You're just so accomplished and you've done so much. You've started so many groups. I do want to talk about, you spearheaded in 2006 the Historic Wind Music Conference, which I didn't know about, and the Vintage Band Music Festival, which is, of course, very, very popular in Northfield. So I've heard about that, and I've been there and loved it. So tell me a little bit how you started the conference and the festival and what inspired that.
For the first year, it's one story.
Okay.
I was a member of this international group called the International Society for the Promotion and Preservation of Wind Music. I was a member of that group for some years, and they were looking for a place to host a conference because they try to travel around primarily to German-speaking countries, but there were other possibilities. This is right after 9/11, see, so I mean, we had to really do some talking, but we got them to come to Northfield. So it was all set up. I was going to have a conference in Northfield. We were all set up with the location and all that kind of stuff. And then we said, well, traditionally, these conferences have musical entertainment that go with them for the people that come from all over the country to sort of listen to some music. And I said, well, I can probably come up with some bands and we'll just do something, you know. And then, well, maybe we can come up with a couple more bands. And all of a sudden, instead of having a chapter conference of the IGEB happening in Northfield, we had the Vintage Band Festival hosting the IGEB. So it was before it even happened, the festival had already eclipsed. And the festival has continued, a big one, about every 3 or 4 years. And then the audiences in the area really wanted to do something in the off years. So we have a one-day festival on off years. So
okay, got it.
And it's now it's a fixture, and I'm very proud of it because it's a good match for Northfield, Minnesota. Musical town with a historical penchant and a great physical space to work with, and it just feels so good to be doing it. It's just great. It's one of my lifetime achievements.
Thank you. It's one of those things that makes Northfield a gem. That's unique for a town this size to have that kind of professionalism come into your town and entertain you for a weekend. It's wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. So the second song you picked is by the same group, but this one is a polka. Tell us about
it. It is Finnish. It is very Finnish.
Okay.
It's very old. Nobody really knows who wrote it. The name Karjala, Karjala, is the Finnish word for Karelia, which is the eastern part of the Finnish-speaking sort of peninsula.
Okay.
And it has some political history because that's where the Russians invaded back in 1939, 1940, the Winter War, when they were assaulting Finland for the beginning of World War II. And so there's some nostalgia about the place. Russia still owns most of it. So they took quite a chunk of Finnish land at that time. This is a polka from Karelia. There's two names for it. One is Karelen polka, which is Karelian polka, or Karelen poikia, which is the boys from Karelia.
So this is the boys of America playing
the boys from Karelia. It's kind of bouncy, you know, it's a polka.
And I'm from New Prague, so this is near and dear to my heart. And it sounds very familiar from all the weddings I went to growing up. That's for sure. I know how to polka. So let's take a listen to this Karelian polka. listening to Musician Talk, hosted by me, Pauline Jennings. You just heard my guest, Dr. Paul Niemisto, on euphonium, playing a traditional Finnish polka with his band, Boys in America. So this song sounds like it has more trumpet than the other.
I think we're probably playing with more dynamic contrast. There's some louder spots.
Right.
But there are no trumpets in any of these groups. There are cornets that play the soprano part.
All right, thank you.
It's a different instrument. It's the difference between a conical and a cylindrical instrument. If you want to talk about the primitive roots, so the animal horn becomes the conical instrument. It starts out small and then gets bigger as it goes to the end, and that creates a certain sound which we associate like with alpine horns and French horns in the orchestra and all those kind of sounds that are very mellow and kind of haunting. And then there's a cylindrical instrument which is based on hollowed out leg bone of a animal, I don't know, and so that it's like a tube, and you can blow on one end and you get a sharp, shrill sound because the sound does not widen. It stays in one cylindrical column at the end, and that's the family of the trumpets.
Got it.
And what's happening with a cornet is it tends more toward the conical. It's more toward the French horn side than it is toward the trumpet side.
It's more mellow.
More mellow.
Yes, it is. And it is on this song too. So thank you for teaching me that. And again, it fills me with joy to listen to this music. So thank you so much.
I've got 5 albums for you to listen to when you get around to it.
I'm going to get your book and your albums. Paul, I could talk to you all day because you have so much to teach and everything is fascinating. It's just so fascinating. So maybe I'll have you back on again so we can talk some more about some more of your life experiences. And there's just so many that we didn't touch on. But I want to move to best gig, worst gig.
I have a couple of gigs that involved rain.
Okay.
I have some stories about rain.
Yes.
One of them is about 4 years ago. The Boys of America were up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, celebrating the Finnish Midsummer, and we did it out at Agate Beach, out at Toivola, which is an old Finnish settlement on the west side near Lake Superior. And we showed up for this thing, and it was just pouring rain. So we were sitting there playing in this tent pavilion, basically with our feet in the water. It was not joyless. It was kind of funny because what could you do, you know?
Right.
And then we left about an hour later, and then I heard that after we left, the sun came out and they had a bonfire on the lake shore, and we missed all the really good stuff.
That's not fair.
Another one is the band at St. Olaf, the Norseman Band I conducted. We decided at the end of the year we were going to have an outdoor concert. So we found out that the showmobile was going to be there, so we had a platform outdoors. We were ready to go. The weather forecast was excellent. There was nothing to prevent this from happening. One of the pieces we were doing was called Godzilla Meets Las Vegas, and the themes is to have the percussion section dressed in Elvis costumes.
Nice.
So we rented those, and we had a downpour.
Oh no.
So that was the end of that concert. At that point, we got about halfway through it, I guess. And we had, cushioned chairs from inside the music department. As far as triumphs, I have a couple that I can think of. One of them was our second year that we were together, 1992. We went to Finland on a tour. It was the 75th anniversary of Finnish independence. There was a big gathering in a sports complex there, and we got to play the Finnish, sort of the Finnish version of "Hail to the Chief" for the Finnish president. Then we did the national anthem, the Finnish national anthem for the Finns there, and that was kind of a tremendous privilege. Musically, maybe nothing big, but that was really something. The other really good memory from Finland with the septet was that we played for a concert at the Lieksa International Brass Week. We played one of the premier seats, and that was when we were playing some of our best stuff before really discerning audiences that really knew what we were doing. So those are really good memories.
Those are great stories, all of them, the bad and the good and the ugly are those poor chairs. It's just really wonderful stories. But thank you for sharing that with us.
None of them got moldy. They all were okay.
Oh, good. Thank God. Thank God. The chairs are okay. But it's time for us to wrap this up, and I want to give you a chance to tell us where we can get your book.
My material, physically, you can put it in your hands by going over to the Content bookstore.
Okay.
They've got all the albums, all 5 albums, and they have the book. Otherwise, you can just get a hold of me. My last name is N as in Nancy, I-E, M as in Mary, I-S, T as in Tom, O, at Stolaf, STOLAF.edu. If you email me or contact me through Facebook, I can talk to you about how we can get some of this lovely stuff in your hands.
And I want to get it into my hands, and I look forward to it. Thank you so much for this just delightful, educational conversation we had today, Paul. And thanks for joining me.
Carry on and do good work.
Thank you, Paul.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks so much to Dr. Paul Niemisto for joining me today to discuss some of his musical journey. And so many thanks to you for tuning in to Musician Talk on the 95.1 KYMN.